So, make sure you guys are following along because we are. We'll do a notebook check towards the end of class today. All right, which one of you nerds stole my pen? Sorry, never mind. It was the calculator. Calculator the whole time. All right, so we are going to be doing a couple different things today to kind of get ready for some more lessons, some more complicated lessons tomorrow and Thursday. We're going to start off by kind of doing something you guys know how to do, but it's just going to be a little more complex today. We're going to find a simpler form of negative x to the third, and then in parentheses, we have 9x to the 4 minus 2x to the 3 plus 7. What do I do whenever I have something outside parentheses?
You distribute them.
We are going to change signs a little bit, yeah. But what's that word when we do the little arc thingy? You said it, Tyler. What was that?
Who are you asking now? Distribute.
Yeah, keep your headphones up. We're going to distribute, and we're just doing some tougher distribute problems. So we are going to distribute just like normal, except now we have this negative x to the third that we're distributing. But it's not really, the whole process isn't different, it's just a little tougher to multiply numbers and stuff together. So when we do this, keep in mind, we're going to multiply numbers times numbers and variables times variables when we do these. So we're going to put our numbers together, we're going to put our variables together. And before we go through, what number is by this negative x to the 3, even though we're not writing it? What number is right in front of that, even though we're not writing it down? 1. This is really a negative 1 x to the 3, which will help us kind of remember what we're multiplying together as we go through here. So, I don't know if YouTube, make some notes. Alright. What? Alright, be a nerd then. Don't be a jock. Alright, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to distribute my first two things here. I'm going to do negative 1x to the 3 times 9x to the 4. I'm going to do my number times my number. Negative 1 times 9 is negative 9. And then I'm going to do variable times variable, x to the 3 times x to the 4. We did this last chapter, not last lesson, but last chapter. I have x to the 3 times x to the 4. What am I doing with my exponents when I'm going to add my exponents together. I'm going to add x to the 3 plus 4, which is x to the 7. X to the 7. And then I'm going to keep going. I have to do negative 1x to the third times negative 2. I can't forget, this negative goes to this 2 right here. So I can't forget that's a negative 2, x to the third. Negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. I'm going to go plus 2 is positive. X to the third times x to the third, just like last chapter, x to the 6.
Plus 6.
And then we're going to keep going. We're almost done. Negative 1 x to the third times 7. Negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. So I'm going to go minus 7. And are there any variables here by the 7? No. So when there's no variables, I just write it down. I'm going to go x to the third. Because I had the x to the third in front here. Nothing on the 7, so I just write it down. So help me. Take that Chromebook. So my final answer, negative 9x to the 7 plus 2x to the 6th minus 7x to the third. For my final answer here. You guys have done this kind of stuff before. You guys know how to distribute. We're just kind of doing some more complicated distributes. So we're going to practice some random ones. It's not going to be super tough, I don't think. You guys are pretty good at these. Alright, so we're going to get some random ones going here. We'll do one more together, and then you guys are going to do one on your own. Get back here. And then I'll just write this out so it looks a little nicer. More like what you'd see in the book. 7x, parentheses, 2x squared, plus 8x, minus 3. Alright, if I'm going to go through and distribute this, before I go any farther though, I have a 7x. What's my exponent on this x right here? 1. So I need to keep that in mind when I distribute. So I'm going to go through, distribute my first part. 7 times 2 is 14. x to the 1 times x squared. I go 1 plus 2 is 3. So I got x to the 3. Then I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go 7 times 8x. 7 times 8 is 56. So I'm going to go plus because that's a positive. 56. x1 times, this is also an x1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I go x2. And then 7x to the 1 times, I can't forget this is a negative 3 right there. That negative stays with that 3. 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. And then there are no other variables, so I'm just going to write down my x. Or my x to the 1, doesn't really matter. When it's 1, you don't have to write the exponent, but if you do, it's not 1. Alright. That's it for that part. You guys ready for an in-class problem, or you want to try another one?
Oh, yeah.
Was that Tyler? You want to do another practice? You want to do an in-class?
Let's do it in class.
Alright. Okay, so somewhere on your paper, maybe underneath this one where you got some space, I'll give you another random problem. And I'm going to change an exponent or two around here real quick, so give me a second before you guys get started. Come on. Oh, 0. The 0 got better. There you go. Alright, so I'm going to actually make this an x squared and this one an x to the 3rd. So to write it out, just so it looks nice, we're going to have a 2x squared parentheses 5x squared plus 2x to the 3rd minus 5. So I want you to distribute on this one. Do it on your own, then you guys are going to help me out in just a minute. Call on a few different people. And then we'll move on to the second part of our lesson. Try to do this one around?
Yeah.
What's the exponent on this one? 2. What's the exponent on this one? 2. 2 plus 2 is? 4. Where's the 4? Oh, yeah. Double check those exponents.
Alright.
No, probably. Oh, but. Might be an x squared right there. Remember, you multiply the numbers. But there's no other variables that go on there. Alright, looking pretty good. So let's get started.
Thank you.
Going over these together. That wasn't a compliment towards you, Tyler. That would be weird.
Wait, what did I say?
I think you said thank you after I said it's looking pretty good. It's weird, man. Alright, Tyler, start us off. I'm going to distribute 2x squared times 5x squared. What do I get?
10x to the
Yep. I get 10x to the 4. Nice job, Roy. I'm going to do 2x squared times a plus 2x to the 3rd. What do I get?
4x to the 5th.
Yep. So we're going to go plus 4x to the 5th. And then, Jake, you got our last one. 2x squared times negative 5.
Minus 10x squared.
Right. Minus 10x squared. Nice job. For my final answer. Nice job. Alright. Second half of our lesson is going to help us get ready. We are going to eventually, in a couple of days, we're going to be doing the opposite of distributing. So, we distributed this 2x squared and we got this. Eventually, we're going to take this and work backwards to get this 2x squared out here. And we're just going to kind of start learning that process here. So, when you guys were in elementary school, you guys actually, probably 4th or 5th grade, you probably did something similar to this. It's more complicated now, but you guys did this way back a long time ago. So So we're going to find the GCF, or do you guys know what GCF stands for? Greatest common factor. We're going to find the greatest common factor of the terms 5x to the third plus 25x squared plus 45x. GCF, greatest common factor. And what the greatest common factor, or I'm probably just going to say GCF because that's a pain to say. What the GCF is it is the biggest number / variable that goes into everything. So I want to get the biggest number that goes into every part on my polynomial up here. The biggest number that goes into 5x to the third and 25x squared and 45x. Biggest number possible. Or in other words, I want the biggest thing that I can divide and not get a decimal. Which you can probably just look at, what's the biggest number I can divide 5 and 25 and 45 by and not get a decimal? 5, right? So that part's pretty easy. It'll get tougher later, but we're going to start with the easy one. So the easiest way, I think at least, to find the greatest common factor when I have a big polynomial like this is I'm going to take each term. So I'm going to take this 5x to the third, I'm going to take my 25x squared, I'm going to take my 45x, and I'm going to break it down into smaller pieces that I multiply together to get this big piece. And I'm going to see what shows up in each list. So when I do these, I don't really care about the negatives. I don't care if it's positive or negative, I'm just going to take the term. So I'm going to take 5x to the third. I'm going to break down the 5 if I can, and I'm going to break down x to the third if I can, into as small pieces as I possibly can. If I look at the number 5, can I break 5 down to be something times something that equals 5 without using decimals? No, it's just 5 times 1, right? If it's times a 1, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to write it down. That one's kind of boring. I'm just going to write down 5. But I'm going to look at x to the third. Can I break that down into smaller x's?
Yep.
Yeah, I can do x to the 1, right? How many x's would I have if I have x to the third?
3.
3 of them. 5x to the third is kind of the same thing as 5 times x times x times x. So I'm breaking this down into as small of numbers as I possibly can. And I'm going to split apart all my variables that I can. So 5x to the third is 5 times x times x times x. I'm going to do the same thing now, but this time with 25x squared. So let's look at 25. Can I break 25 down to be two smaller numbers multiplied?
Yes.
What are they?
Times 5 times 5.
5 times 5, right? 5 times 5 is 25. So I'm going to break it down to be smaller numbers here. And then if I have x squared, that's 2 x's. So I'm going to go x times x. Alright, nothing else I can do there. Now I'm going to look at 45x. Can I break 45x down to be something times something? 9 times 5, right? Okay. But when I do this,
You can break 9 down to 3 times 3.
yeah, I can break 9 down even smaller, right? 9 is really a 3 times 3. So even though 9 times 5 works, I want as small of numbers as I possibly can get. So I'm actually going to cross out this 9, and I'm going to change that to a 3 times a 3. Which is still 9, but I want as small of numbers as I possibly can get. And then I have just a single x, so I'm going to put just a single x right there. Okay, to find my greatest common factor, I'm going to look at each list, and I want to see what shows up in every list.
5x.
So a 5 shows up in every list, right? 5, 5, and a 5. And then I have an x, and an x in every list. Does the second x show up in every list?
Yes. No.
No. There's only one x down here. So it's got to be in every single thing. I've got a 5, and then I've got an x. My greatest common factor is 5x. So I just look at one list and say what shows up in each one. I got a 5 that shows up in each one. I got an x that shows up in each one. My greatest common factor is 5x. And I know this is kind of a long process, but eventually these get a lot more complicated, a lot harder to do. You can't just look at them and say, oh, it's 5 and an x. So we're learning the whole process on easy ones before we start on the hard ones. So we're going to do a couple more of these, and then that'll be it. So we're going to find the greatest common factor of 4x to the 5th minus 24x to the 3rd plus 8x. So I'm going to go through, and I'm just going to make my lists. So 4x to the 5th. What is 4 multiplied? Actually, let's go around. Let's have you guys help me out. Ryan, how can I split apart 4 to be two smaller numbers? Multiplied together. 2 times 2? Can I split up those 2's any farther? No. Not without getting decimals, and we don't want decimals. All right, DeAndre, how many x's am I going to have?
5.
5 of them. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pretty easy. All right, when I look at my 24 x to the 3rd here, I don't care about the negative part. I'm just going to go 24 x to the 3rd, like this. I don't care about the negative. And then keep going around. Caleb, how can I split up 24? 3 times 8. All right, that's good. But can't I split apart 8 farther? How can I split apart 8? 4 times 2. So I'm going to cross out that 8. I'm going to go 4 times 2. But can I split apart that 4 even farther? 2 times 2, yep. These can be kind of annoying splitting them apart like this. But you guys are doing good. So I really have 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 for my 24. And then let's keep going. Dancing Star, how many x's am I going to have?
3.
Yep. So I'm going to go times x, times x, times x. Pretty good. And then my last one is 8x. Ira, can I split apart this 8? Ira. Get your headphones out.
What?
Dang earbuds. This kid. How can I split apart this 8, Ira?
The 4th?
4 times what?
2.
Take out those headphones. But can I split apart 4 even farther?
Yes, sir.
What times what is 4?
2.
2 times 2, right?
Yeah.
So I want the smallest number possible. So I'm going to cross out that 4. I'm going to go 2 times 2.
3 times 3 times 2.
Alright, and then I'm only going to have 1x in here. Okay. So I've made my list. I need to see what shows up in all of them. So I've got 2 in every list. And I have a second 2 in every list. I got another 2 there, another 2 there, another 2 there.
What do we do with the 2
We'll
2's?
see in a second. And then I also have a single x shows up in every list.
4x?
It will be 4. So when I look at these, I have a 2, I got a second 2, and I got an x. I am going to multiply all of these together. I go 2 times 2 times x. It's kind of like you just look at one line and you ignore the rest. So I split this to be a 2 times 2 times x. 2 times 2 is 4, times x just makes it a 4x. My greatest common factor is a 4x. So when you have numbers, multiply them together. If you have more than one variable, multiply those together. Alright. Let's do... Actually, I think you guys are up now. Alright. So, your next in-class problem, I want you to find the greatest common factor of 6x to the 4th plus 8x to the 3rd plus 4x. So, start by making your lists. Then see what shows up in every list. And then, if you get a bunch of things, multiply them together. We'll go from there. So on your own, make your lists, then find your greatest common factor. In my class. Now all of a sudden.
I gotta feel
Just clean it up.
No. Oh,
Let's go. Alright, get. As you guys do these, eventually you'll do enough of them, you can kind of just look at them and see what it is. especially if they're small numbers.
Oh yeah.
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 Alright.
But for right now, we'll practice making our lists. Just because these get a little tough. Some of them can be. This one's not super tough.
Not really.
Did you find your greatest common factor, Tyler?
Yes, sir.
You did.
Wait, what? There's no more?
Yeah, sorry, Mo. Yeah, I got some paper towels.
I can get some.
I'm gonna wrap that nose up real good.
That hurt. Alright, I'll go look for it.
Alright, go ahead, Carrie. She'll get you some Kleenexes. Alright. Get your greatest common factor, Caleb. What you, Jake? Alright.
I did.
You didn't actually write down though. You made your list. Alright, let's go over them. Pick eeny, meeny, miny. Yeah, DeAndre. How'd you split up 6x to the 4?
3 times 2.
Okay, keep going.
Times x, times x, times x,
Yep. Alright, for our next one, Caleb, how did you split up 8x to the 3rd?
4 times 2, then 2 times 2 times 2.
So really 2 times 2 times 2, right? And how many x's?
3.
Yep.
So x to
Yep. And then dancing star, how do you split up 4x? And then just a single x, right? Alright. Roy, what shows up in each list?
2x.
Yep, 2x. So this one's pretty easy. 'Cause I got a 2, 2, 2, x, x, x. I don't really need to do anything other than just write down 2x for my greatest common factor. Pretty good. Alright, that's it. For your exit ticket, it's actually a little easier because there's only 2 things. You only have to do make 2 lists. So for your exit ticket, make your 2 lists, find your greatest common factor, and then you will type it into Socrative. I'll turn that on in just a second. So find your greatest common factor, put it in Socrative, and then I'll put the homework on Google Classroom. That'll be it. You guys can listen to music once you're done with your exit ticket.